Do you guys know what my favorite summer squash to grow is? It is called the patty pan squash. Through the years, I've had friends and family ask me, what the heck is that thing? And how do you cook it? What's it taste like? Come along with me and I'll show you one way that I like to prepare this, my favorite way. I want to start this video out by giving all of my old supporters and subscribers a great big giant thank you. You guys are really keeping my views up. Also, I want to welcome some new subscribers. I've been getting quite a few lately, and we're hoping that you guys will stick around and see our adventures here at the homestead. I feel like I need to give a little bit of background information on my channel. My Homestead Rewind YouTube channel is not a how-to channel. It's a how we got it done channel. This is just an invitation for you to join our journey returning back to our farm in South Central Missouri and trying again to become a more self-sustainable farm. We've been down that road one time, and actually I wouldn't say that we failed, but we never really achieved our goals. So we've come back to double our efforts and try again. We are hoping that by sharing our journey, we are inspiring others to become more self-sustainable and to encourage folks who are just now starting out. There are loads and loads of homesteading YouTube channels out there, but a lot of times they're so far advanced in it that we feel like there's just no hope for us to catch up to them, or maybe we just don't have what it takes. And that's what our channel is about. You don't have to necessarily do things the way everybody else does them to attain the same goal. The important thing is just to start. Plant a seed. See how you do. Maybe you don't have a great big yard, but you still can plant a seed. There are other ways too that make you more sustainable, by bulk buying and dividing and putting food away. And I strive on this channel to show you how I'm doing it. It's easy to get really discouraged when you see people that are so far ahead, but just remember, every single thing you do is something that you've done for yourself to become more sustainable. And every little thing counts. Now, let's get into the patty pan squash. Patty pan squash grows on a plant that is just like your yellow squash or your zucchini squash. I have yellow squash growing too. I love the flavor of those, and I love to pick them when they're really small. Generally, with the yellow squash, I end up grilling them. Patty pan squash are a little bit different, and you can see I've had them get as big as a dinner plate before, but you really don't want them to get that way because the seeds in them get as big as pumpkin seeds. This is about the maximum size that I will harvest. And I always try to get them when they're more like this size. They just seem to be more dense, have more flavor, and you don't have the seeds to contend with. But I picked this one. It kind of got away from me, so this is the one I'm going to use today. Before we cut into this and I show you what it actually looks like, I want to talk to you about what I've been doing with those dehydrated onions you've seen on an earlier video. Onions are something that you want to make really, really good and sure that you get dried. I mean, like, just as dry as you possibly can. And I dried these onions for a long, long time. I think total amount of time was 20 hours to dehydrate my whole tray. It made it a lot easier this time because I had a good friend who wasn't using her dehydrator anymore, and her trays actually fit on my dehydrator. So not only do I have a backup dehydrator in case something should ever happen to this one, which I don't think is going to, because I've had this Nesco Dehydrator for years and years and years. I've dehydrated anything from deer jerky to fruit leather on this dehydrator, and I bought it for $5 at a garage sale. I'm sure that I've had it for more than 10 years. But it's always nice to know that I've got a backup should anything happen. You can actually stack up to 12 trays on this dehydrator, just so long as they fit and they'll stack and hold tight. Now, when you start getting that many layers, you do want to go out and rotate the trays just from time to time, just to kind of get them to evenly dry so that they're all done at the same time. After I get done dehydrating my onions, I take them off, let them cool completely down to room temperature. I keep them in their trays and let them cool completely down to room temperature. Once I feel like they're down to room temperature, then I will remove them from the trays and put them in a glass jar. I will loosely put the lid on them just for overnight, and the next morning I come in and shake them, and if they shake like this, that means I've done a good job. I don't have to return them to my dehydrator. One of those things that I was talking about earlier that I buy in the bulk and separate and find different ways to preserve is onions. I have never been really good at growing onions. However, this year, after watching many videos and learning how to plant them, I did do a little bit better. But until I reach the point that I can grow and harvest enough onions for me and Jay for the whole year, it really is cheaper to buy onions this way and bring them home and preserve them than it is to just run to the store and grab a few pounds at a time. Plus, I tend to get way better, bigger onions. Once in a while you'll get a batch that some of them are a little bit hot or some of them are a little bit rotten. I just cut that off and roll on. But for the most part, those are really good onions that I get from them, and I've done this for years and years, all the time that the kids were growing up. Dehydrating them is something that is new to me as of last year, and I have discovered that one of my favorite things to do with dehydrated onions is turn them to powder. You cannot believe the difference in the flavor of onion powder that you make this way versus what you buy at the store. So let's get started. Oh, I wanted to say that this jar right here reduced down 6 onions, 6 big onions reduced to this size, and now I'm getting ready to reduce it down even more. I live in an RV camper, so the smaller I can get it, the more I can have. Now, the reason you want to make sure that your onions are really dry is because they are a vegetable that contains a lot of sugar. Believe it or not, when an onion is dried out, it can become very sticky, and eventually I will tell you that it does cake. No matter how well you seal it off, it will cake. The reason your onion powder from the store don't cake is because they put all kinds of junk in it, that anti-caking properties and everything else. I just as soon take the spoon and break it up and use it, knowing I don't have those extra ingredients. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, just certain times of the year whenever it tends to be more humid inside the camper. In your house, you may not have a problem at all. Now, I love my Ninja. My mom bought me this Ninja years and years ago. I don't know what I'm going to do if it ever wears out or breaks on me, because I haven't seen the Ninjas like this. And I know they have them, but they didn't look like this. As you can see, those are really, it's been a week since I've done these. So that just encourages me to go ahead and turn them into powder. And I shouldn't have too much problem with them caking up. Alright, got that on. And we're just going to Ninja the heck out of them. Remember, you're making powder, so you really got to grind them up for quite a while. Okay, I added half of the jar that time. Already it's reduced down. I've got powder going on. You can see it flying up when I take the lid off, maybe. I don't know if the camera shows that or not. I'm just going to add some more. Ooh, it smells so good. You know the French fried onions, French fried onions that you put on green bean casserole? That's what this smells like. And I have plans in the future to maybe take those and fry them up in just a little bit of olive oil and use them for the green bean casserole. We'll see. If that works, I'll let you guys know. Now, after I've powdered them a little bit, I always like to give them a good shake and powder them some more, just to make sure I'm getting them as fine as I possibly can. And now you can see that I turned the 1 quart of dehydrated onions into a pint of powdered onions. I use that in soups, in my taco meat, in my meatloaf, just everything. Anything you can imagine. It's a great seasoning, and there's no added salt to it. You get to choose how much salt you're putting in your food. You can see that that's sticking a little bit there. That's the sugars in there. It's going to do that. Some of it actually did clump together, but I'm not too concerned about that. I'm almost out of the ones that I did in the spring, but let me show you how they look after several months on the shelf. I just feel like I want to show you what I mean about the caking. See, I mean, it is still powdery, but it has caked up in the bottom. I'm just going to take a spoon, and you can see I just gently scrape it up, and it's back to powder again. So it's not that really hard caking that you sometimes get. Anyway, I'm glad I'm making some more, because I was almost out of that. and it's so yummy on this squash. I always like to use this. It just helps. I'm so messy. And I'm going to show you how it's coming out of there. I'm putting the lid on it for now, but later on I'll come back and seal it with my brake bleeder. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link to it right here so that you guys can find it and see how I seal my dry goods that I'm going to use for long-term storage. That'll just help keep the moisture out of it and keep the freshness in. Okay, it's well past my lunchtime and I am starving to death. It's very quick, very simple. I eat it a lot during the summertime when I have these kind of squash. Now you can see I've got this little skillet. That's all I'm going to need for one of these patty pan squash, and I've got it heating up. I want that grease to be very, very hot before I put these in here. So this is how I slice up the patty pan squash. Lots of people think that these are going to be orange on the inside, like maybe an acorn squash, but they're not. I mean, they taste more like a zucchini or a yellow summer squash. They're not that type of melon squash. They're not the pie squash like. Now, I like to slice mine really thin. My phone's going crazy. Of course I'm recording. And you can slice them, dice them any way you want. I just like to do it this way. This end piece, I'm just going to slice like this. Just taking the core out. Now this squash is going to take 2 skilletfuls because of its size, and these long pieces I'm just going to dice up. I'll cook them after I cook these because this really is the way I like to eat them. I want you to see there are seeds in there, but the seeds are really soft. You won't notice them once they cook up. If you let this squash go any further, those seeds are apt to turn hard and just be a nuisance for you. Let me get you over here to the skillet. I have this skillet on low heat, but you can see I'm drizzling a little water in there. It's that hot, and that's the way I want it, on low heat and hot. And I'm just going to, like, very carefully, try not to get myself popped too much, place those squashes in there. And I'm just going to let them set. I'm not going to flip them or turn them over for quite a little while. Remember, this is on low heat. It is hot grease. The reason it's on the low heat is because there is moisture in that squash, and if I kept it on the high heat, that would just pop all over the place on me. So I'm keeping it on low, but my grease was hot initially. The object here is to get a good golden brown on that squash. Now I'm going to go ahead while it's cooking on that side and just let it start getting the seasonings in and sprinkle some of my onion powder that I made, my homemade onion powder, on each one of those. And you can see that they're starting to turn translucent as it cooks. That's what we want. We want them to turn translucent. We're just going to let that cook for a while. While those are cooking for a while, I'm going to go ahead and cut up a piece of garlic. This is a pretty good clove. I like garlic a lot, and so I go big when I go garlic. You guys don't have to do this. But just remember, garlic is really, really good for you. If you can eat it at all, it's always a good thing. Now, for cooking the squash, I want to slice my garlic. And I'm going to slice it pretty thin. That way I can keep an eye on it after I get it in the skillet, because I like my garlic for this dish exact certain kind of way. Now, I also have an heirloom tomato, just a little one, a small one. I think these are my Cherokee Purple. I'm pretty sure that's what this one was. And I'm just going to slice it up too. You can see how the squash is getting more and more translucent all the time. That means that it's actually cooking the inside. But like I said before, I want it to be brown on the side before I flip it. And I'm just going to check this. You can see it's starting to get a little bit of brown on there, but that's not near enough. Sometimes while it's cooking, I like to just kind of spin it around just to make sure it's getting evenly browned. Now that I've reached the translucency in there, it seems like the water is probably cooking out and probably will not pop me, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat up just a little bit just to get it to brown quicker. If that gets to popping too much, I'll have to turn it back down again. You definitely want to keep your eye on this when you're cooking it. I'm noticing that it's wanting to float. Another sign that we're getting closer to flipping. You can see, oh, it's getting some brown, but not enough brown for me. We're going to cook it some more. Turn this one around. Okay, you can see it's got a golden brown going on that side. That one's ready to flip. Let's see how we look on this one. Yep, we're getting the golden brown. Now that I've flipped these all over and I've got my golden brown going on, I'm going to go ahead and add my tomatoes in. I'll have to turn that down a little bit because the tomatoes have so much juice in it and I just don't want the mess. After I get the tomatoes in and it looks like they're cooking pretty good, I'm going to go ahead and just place my garlic on the top. I don't really want it to start cooking yet because I don't want to cause it to burn and smoke. I like my garlic in this dish to be toasted, and it can even be a little bit on the burnt side. I like the bitterness of the burnt flavor of garlic. It just gives the dish pizzazz. I'm going to come through, and as I flip over my squash, I'm going to put it on the top and let my garlic pieces fall to the bottom and let my tomatoes fall to the bottom. Go ahead and put all those garlics in there so they'll get started toasting. Now you can see that the tomatoes are starting to fall apart. That's what I want. And my garlic is dancing. I'm going to give it a few more minutes to toast up. Look how that's coming together, and look how my garlic has toasted up. So nice. And those tomato juices are cooking down. Now I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of basil on top of that and let that wilt down. And then we'll get it on a plate. Oh, it smells so good and I'm starving. Alrighty. Now put that on there. Put a little bit of the Redmond salt, a smidget of pepper. Make it pretty with some basil leaves for garnish. Now I don't always use basil leaves. Sometimes I'll use dill. It just depends on what I have in the garden. I'm just now getting my dill growing again so that I can continue making pickles with all those cucumbers that are out there. Now for the taste test. I've got a bit of that slightly crusty tomato, the lightly burnt garlic, and a piece of that squash. It's like heaven, guys. You gotta try it. I was about to starve to death on y'all. Listen, if you guys enjoyed this recipe and you enjoyed listening to my chatter, would you please smash the subscribe button and also hit that like button. And if you know somebody that would be interested in this recipe, please share my video. Sharing really makes a huge difference. Don't forget, I have t-shirts for sale that will help support this channel so I can keep it going, and it also helps support a stay-at-home mom. I'll leave information for that at the very end of the video. Alright, it's on to get my evening chores done and get supper ready for Jay. Until next time, love and peace to everyone.